Hello, welcome to the EPG Pathshala on Biophysics, Paper 2, Quantum Biophysics. In this paper, today we'll take up Module 9, that is the Born-Oppenheimer approximation and the valence bond method for the hydrogen molecule. Quantum biophysics deals with the application of the principles and techniques of quantum mechanics to solve problems in biophysics, mostly in the area of molecular biophysics. To have a better understanding of that, we first need to learn the techniques of molecular quantum mechanics. The Born-Oppenheimer approximation is a very basic approximation in molecular quantum mechanics, and the valence bond method is one of the first methods to explain the formation of molecules using quantum mechanics. In the next few slides, we will introduce you in a very simple way to both of these methods. This module, our objectives are to appreciate the need for approximations in solving the molecular Schrödinger equation, to understand the basis of the Born-Oppenheimer approximation and its utility, and to learn about the valence bond method, one of the first methods in quantum mechanics, which were developed to explain the formation of molecules. The non-relativistic Hamiltonian for a molecule can be generally written as a sum of 5 terms as given in this equation. The Hamiltonian H is equal to minus h bar square by twice m sum over I del I square. This corresponds to the kinetic energy of the electrons. The next term is minus sum over A h bar square by twice m A del square A. This corresponds to the kinetic energy of the nuclei, minus sum over AI ZA E square divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 RAI. This corresponds to the attractive interaction between the nuclei and the electrons. Sum over A and B ZA ZB E square by 4 pi epsilon 0 RAB. This corresponds to the repulsion between the nuclei plus sum over I greater than J E square 4 pi epsilon 0 Rij, which corresponds to the repulsion between the electrons. Here small m corresponds to the mass of one electron. Ma, capital Ma corresponds to the mass of the nuclei corresponding to the type A. So if there are many types of nuclei in the molecule, then their corresponding masses have to be used. Za and Zb are the atomic numbers for nuclei type A and type B, and E stands for the electronic charge. Small r Ai stands for the distance between electron I and nucleus A. Capital RAB stands for the distance between nucleus A and nucleus B, and small rij stands for the distance between two electrons I and J. Now this equation can be represented in a more compact form as H equals TER, where TER is the kinetic energy operator for the electrons, plus TNR, which is the kinetic energy operator for the nuclei, plus VENRR, which is the potential energy operator for electron nuclei interaction, plus VNNR, which is the potential energy operator for interaction between the nuclei, and VEER, which is the potential energy operator for electron-electron interaction. The interesting thing about the above equations is that this is a completely general description about any molecule in the universe as long as it is composed of nuclei and electrons. If we solve the equation for this system, we get to know, in principle, all properties of this molecule and by extension, matter composed of molecules. This equation, therefore, holds the key to understand the secrets of different forms of matter, be they metals, semiconductors, inorganic and organic compounds, or complex biological molecules and their assemblages. Dirac, the famous physicist and mathematician, to note that the fundamental laws necessary for the mathematical treatment of a large part of physics and the whole of chemistry are thus completely known, and the difficulty lies only in the fact that application of these laws leads to equations that are too complex to be solved. The Born-Oppenheimer approximation provides a very important method for simplifying the solution of the molecular wave function. Based on the idea that the nuclei being much more massive than the electrons, the nuclei can be considered to be almost stationary when considering the motion of the electrons. Mathematically, let us start from a subset of the complete Hamiltonian and call it the electronic Hamiltonian. So in this equation, we have the electronic Hamiltonian designated as HL, that is equal to TER, that is the kinetic energy operator for the electrons, plus VENRR, that is the potential energy operator for electron-nuclei interaction, plus VEER, that is potential energy operator for electron-electron interaction. In this electronic Hamiltonian, we have neglected the nuclear kinetic energy term and the nuclear-nuclear repulsion as a constant term. Now we can write the Schrödinger equation with this electronic Hamiltonian, and it will look like this equation: H electronic psi RR equals E electronic RR psi RR. So when we solve this equation, we get the electronic wave functions dependent on the nuclear coordinates and the electronic energy levels. Now let us again consider the original Hamiltonian operating on a total wave function, and this total wave function we have split into two parts. One is psi RR and another is chi R. The psi RR is the electronic wave function that is dependent on the nuclear coordinates, and chi R is the nuclear wave functions. And when we operate this with the total Hamiltonian, original Hamiltonian, we get the total eigenvalues, energy eigenvalues, E total psi RR chi R. If we now allow the nuclei to move, albeit slowly compared to the electrons, we cannot formally neglect the nuclear kinetic energy terms. The electronic kinetic energy does not depend on the nuclear coordinates, so that TE psi RR chi R, where TE is the electronic kinetic energy operator, can be written as chi R Te psi RR. However, the equivalent statement for the nuclear kinetic energy is not in general true, as in this equation Tn psi RR chi R. This cannot be written as psi RR Tn chi R because psi RR contains a nuclear coordinate dependence. Now we shall use the chain rule to examine this point in more detail. The chain rule of differentiation tells us that del square A psi RR chi R equals psi RR del square A chi R plus 2 del A psi RR del A chi R plus chi R del square psi RR. In this equation, as before, we assume A corresponds to a nuclear coordinate. Now, how did we arrive at the right-hand side? The first differentiation gave us two terms, chi R del A psi RR and psi RR del A chi R. Differentiating again, we get four terms, two of which are the same, that is equal to del A psi RR del A chi R and del A chi R del A psi RR. On the basis of the above and taking into account the electronic Schrödinger equation, that is equation 5 with the expression for the Hamiltonian given by equation 4, that is Te plus Ven RR plus Vee RR operating on psi RR, that is equal to HL psi RR equals EL psi RR. We get an expression from equation 7 that psi RR Tn chi R plus chi R psi RR ELR plus VNN minus sum over A 1 by 2 MA 2 del A psi RR del A chi R plus chi R del square A psi RR equals E total psi RR chi R. The first term on the left-hand side of this equation comes from the first term in the chain rule. The two terms in the parenthesis also come from the remaining two terms in the chain rule, that is in equation 10. So these terms take care of the TNR operator, the kinetic energy operator for the nuclei. The result of the remaining operators together can be written in the form chi R psi RR into ELR plus VNN. What will be the relative magnitude of the terms within the parenthesis? We can estimate it approximately. Consider the term 1 by 2 MA del square A psi RR. Now, del A psi RR is about the same as del I psi RR since they operate over similar dimensions. As a consequence, we can write 1 by 2 MA del square A psi RR is almost equal to P square E by 2 MA, and that is equal to small m by capital MA EE, where PE is the electronic momentum and EE is the electronic energy. Now, considering the smallness of the mass of the electron in comparison to the nuclear mass, the terms in the parenthesis may be neglected so that Tn plus EELR plus VNN chi R equals E total chi R. Another way of looking at it in a qualitative manner is to consider that since the nuclear wave functions are much more localized than the electronic wave functions, which are much more diffuse and spread over a much larger region of space, the derivative del A chi r is much greater than del A psi rr. Therefore, the term involving del square A chi r dominates over the terms in the parenthesis. So, in the equation Tn plus ELR plus VNN chi r equals E total chi r, we have the nuclear wave equation showing that the nuclei move in a potential, a part of which is set up by the electrons and the rest by the nuclear repulsive potential. The functions ELR are actually eigenvalues of the electronic Hamiltonian and as such can have different values at a particular nuclear configuration R. These will give rise to a number of surfaces as we vary the nuclear coordinates. The Born-Oppenheimer approximation and the resulting idea of a potential energy surface for the nuclei are of key importance in biophysics, particularly for the area of molecular modeling and the technique of classical molecular dynamics simulation. In classical molecular dynamics simulation method, we consider the nuclei as classical particles moving in a potential energy surface, VMR plus ELNR, where the electronic energy is mostly of the ground state configuration of the molecule, which can be written as EL0R. Then the motion of the nuclei would be governed by Newton's second law, which we can write as capital M d2r dt square equals minus ddr VNNR plus EL0R. Since biologically important molecules consist of a large number of nuclei which are coupled by the potential energy functions, it is generally not possible to solve the coupled differential equations analytically. So, spatial numerical algorithms have been proposed to approximately simulate the motion of the nuclei in this Born-Oppenheimer potential energy surfaces. So, let us now go over to the valence bond method. In 1927, Hitler and London came up with a reasonably satisfactory explanation of the stability of a molecule. We shall examine that approach for the hydrogen molecule. This approach has been subsequently extended to treat more complex molecules and has been called the valence bond method. Let us start from considering two separate hydrogen atoms. Let us also assume that they are in their ground states and far apart. In this separate atom scenario, the wave function will be simply the product of two wave functions, psi 1s a r1, psi 1s b r1. In this expression, we have assigned electron 1 to atom A and electron 2 to atom B, and the electronic coordinates are given as R1 and R2. When the two atoms come closer so that their separation is near about the equilibrium bond distance, the electrons start to mix and we can no longer tell if electron 1 belongs to A or B. The same reasoning holds for electron 2. Hitler and London suggested that in such a situation, one can use a combination of both of these possibilities. So, in other words, we construct a wave function in the manner psi equals C1 psi 1 plus C2 psi 2, where psi 1 equals 1s1 1sp2, where electron 1 corresponds to atom A and electron 2 corresponds to atom B. and a second wave function psi2 that is equal to 1sA2, 1sB1. Here electron 2 corresponds to atom A and electron 1 corresponds to atom B. We can now write a secular equation for this situation. Now, to understand how a secular equation arises, we have to digress a bit and discuss what is known as the variational method. Let us take an arbitrary quantum system and consider its ground state. The ground state wave function psi0 and the ground state energy E0 obeys the Schrödinger equation given by H psi0 equals E0 psi0. Now let us multiply this equation from the left by psi0 star and integrate over the entire space. Then we obtain the equation E0 equals integral psi0 star H psi0 d tau divided by integral psi0 star psi0 d tau being the relevant volume element. The denominator may not in general be unity unless psi0 has been normalized. There is a theorem which states that substituting any other function phi for psi0 in this equation will give us a quantity E phi, where E phi is given by E phi equals integral phi star H phi d tau divided by phi star phi d tau, which must be greater than the ground state energy that can be expressed as E phi greater than or equal to E0. The equality holds only when phi equals psi0. This result is known as the variational principle and the theorem the variational theorem. The proof of the variational theorem is quite simple. We can expand the function phi in terms of the eigenfunctions of the Hamiltonian H. Phi equals C0 psi0 plus C1 psi1 plus C2 psi2 plus so on. Then integral phi star H phi d tau equals integral C0 star psi0 star plus C1 star psi1 star plus other terms H C0 psi0 plus C1 psi1 plus other terms d tau, and this comes out as E0 mod C0 square plus E1 mod C1 square plus so on if the eigenfunctions are orthonormal. Similarly, integral phi star phi d tau equals C0 mod C0 square plus C1 square plus other terms, and this is equal to 1 if phi is normalized. Now E phi can be written as E0 mod C0 square plus E1 mod C1 square plus other terms, and this must be greater than or equal to E0 mod C0 square plus E0 C1 square plus other terms, which can be written as E0 into mod C0 square plus mod C1 square plus other terms, and since this sum is equal to 1, this is equal to E0. So we can see that E phi must be greater than or equal to E0 since the sum in the expression for the E phi contains the terms E0, E1, E2, and all these energy levels are larger than the ground state energy level. So this proves the variational theorem that E phi greater than or equal to E0, and the equality holds only when phi equals psi0. Now let us take phi as a linear combination of two arbitrary functions. The significance of the variational principle is that we can calculate an upper bound to E0 by using any trial function. The closer we can take phi to psi 0 in some manner, E phi will be closer to E0. Now if we choose phi so that it depends on some parameters alpha, beta, gamma, etc., which we will call variational parameters, the energy E phi will also depend on them, and so E phi alpha, beta, gamma will be greater than or equal to E0. Now we can minimize E phi with respect to alpha, beta, gamma and approach E0 from above. Now let us take phi as a linear combination of two arbitrary functions and write it as C1F1 plus C2F2. For simplicity, let us assume C1, C2 and F1, F2 to be real valued. Then integral phi h phi d tau equals integral C1 F1 plus C2 F2 h C1 F1 plus C2 F2 d tau, and that is equal to C1 square integral F1 h F1 d tau plus C1 C2 integral F1 h F2 d tau plus C1 C2 integral F2 h F1 d tau plus C2 square integral F2 h F2 d tau. This we write as C1 square H11 plus C1 C2 H12 plus C1 C2 H21 plus C2 square H22, where Hij equals integral Fi h Fj d tau. Because the Hamiltonian H is Hermitian, Hij equals Hji, or integral phi h phi d tau equals C1 square H11 plus 2 C1 C2 H12 plus C2 square H22. In a similar manner, we can write integral phi square d tau equals C1 square S11 plus 2 C1 C2 S12 plus C2 square S22, where Sij equals Sji equals integral phi I phi j d tau. So we can write E phi equals E as a function of C1 and C2, and that is equal to C1 square H11 plus 2 C1 C2 H12 plus C2 square H22 divided by C1 square S11 plus 2 C1 C2 S12 plus C2 square S22. Or we can write E C1 C2 into C1 square S11 plus 2 C1 C2 S12 plus C2 square S22 equals C1 square H11 plus 2 C1 C2 H12 plus C2 square H22. Now let us differentiate this with respect to C1. Then we get 2 C1 S11 plus 2 C2 S12 into E plus del E del C1 into C1 square S11 plus 2 C1 C2 S12 plus C2 square S22 equals 2 C1 H11 plus 2 C2 H12. Since we are trying to minimize E, we put del E del C1 equals 0. In that case, we get C1 into H11 minus E S11 plus C2 H12 minus E S12 equals 0. Similarly, we get C1 into H12 minus E S12 plus C2 into H22 minus Es22 equals 0 by putting del E del C2 equals 0. These give us a pair of linear algebraic equations for C1 and C2. To have a non-trivial solution, that is, a solution other than the trivial solution, C1 equals C2 equals 0, the determinant of the coefficients must vanish, or determinant H11 minus ES11, H12 minus ES12, H21 minus ES21, H22 minus ES22, that is equal to 0. This determinant is the secular determinant, and this equation is called the secular equation. We can now generalize by writing phi equals sum over n Cn Fn, and then the secular determinant will also be an n by n determinant and will satisfy a secular equation. So returning back to our case of the hydrogen molecule, the secular equation for this situation will be H determinant H11 minus ES11, H12 minus ES12, H21 minus ES21, H22 minus ES22 equals 0. Now what are the matrix elements H11, S11, H12, S12? It is easy to see that in case of normalized orbitals, S11, that is equal to integral dr1 dr2 1 sa1 1 sb2 1 sa1 1 sb2, and that can be written as integral dr1 1 sa1 1 sa1 and dr2 1 sb2 1 sb2, and that is equal to 1 into 1 and equal to 1. The same applies for S22, so that S22 is also equal to 1. The situation for S12 is however different. S12 is integral dr1 dr2 1 sa1 1 sb2 1 sa2 1 sb1, that is equal to integral dr1 1 sa1 1 sb1 integral dr2 1 sb2 1 sa2. The two integrals in the last step are in fact identical. If we denote each of them by s, where s equals integral dr1 1 sa1 1 sb1, then s12 equals s21 equals s square. Let us now consider the other elements in the secular equation. H11 equals integral dr1 dr2 1 sa1 1 sb2 h 1 sa1 1 sb2, which is conventionally written as H11 equals minus 1 plus j. J is called the Coulomb integral, as the integral can be shown to consist of terms representing electrostatic interactions only. Similar calculations show that H22 equals H11. However, the result for H12 is more involved and can be finally written as H12 equals minus s square plus k, where k is called the exchange integral. It is impossible to interpret k in a classical fashion, making it a completely quantum phenomenon arising out of the indistinguishability of electrons. So putting all these things together, we have determinant minus 1 plus j minus e minus s square plus k minus es square minus s square plus k minus es square minus 1 plus j minus e equals 0, and therefore we have as a solution two values of e given as e plus minus equals minus 1 plus j plus minus k by 1 plus minus s square. If the two hydrogen atoms are separated by a large distance, the last term will be 0 and the energy will be equal to minus 1. Then the change in energy due to molecule formation can be written as delta E plus minus, and that is equal to J plus minus K by 1 plus minus S square. This gives us two values for the energy, and the lower energy corresponds to the more stable bonded form of the hydrogen molecule. The corresponding normalized molecular wave functions are psi plus equals 1 by square root of 2 into 1 plus S square, psi 1 plus psi 2, and psi minus equals 1 by square root of 2 1 minus S square into psi 1 minus psi 2. The treatment remains incomplete if we do not consider the spin of the electrons. Because of the indistinguishability of the two electrons, we can have only 4 types of spin functions: alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2, 1 by root 2 alpha 1 beta 2 plus alpha 2 beta 1, 1 by root 2 alpha 1 beta 2 minus alpha 2 beta 1. The first 3 functions are symmetric under the exchange of electrons, and the last one is antisymmetric. To obtain a complete wave function comprised of spatial and spin functions that is also antisymmetric under the joint exchange of spatial and spin coordinates of the two electrons, we can either multiply the symmetric space function with the antisymmetric spin function, or multiply the antisymmetric space function with one of the 3 symmetric spin functions. Since the Hamiltonian does not contain a spin-dependent term, the presence of the spin functions do not affect the energy. In the first case, therefore, we have what we call a singlet state. In the second case, a triplet state, 3 states with the same energy. From evaluations of the integrals J, K and S at different internuclear separations, one finds that the state with the symmetric spatial function corresponds to the stable state of the hydrogen molecule. From the Hitler-London theory, the bond length of the hydrogen molecule comes out as 0.80 angstrom, which is fairly close to the observed value of 0.74 angstrom. The dissociation energy of the molecule is calculated to be equal to 3.14 electron volt. Since the observed value is 4.72 electron volt for the hydrogen molecule, it is apparent that the Hitler-London approach was not very accurate. There has been an interesting development based on the valence bond idea, which was pioneered by Professor Arie Worschel in the 1980s. Professor Arie Worschel has recently been awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for multiscale modeling. Together with Professor Martin Karplus and Professor Michael Levitt, they built the foundation for the subject area of molecular modeling within theoretical and computational chemistry, biophysics and biochemistry. The approach Professor Worschel developed is called the empirical valence bond theory, or EVB. As we have seen, valence bond theory is mainly concerned with bonds within molecules. It is based on the assumption that a system can be described by a set of structures which differ basically in the composition of valence electrons. In each of these structures, electrons are associated with some particular atoms or groups and therefore can be thought of as localized to a certain extent. The overall wave function is taken as a linear combination of these different valence bond structures, or rather wave functions corresponding to these different valence bond structures. We can thus write psi Vb equals sum over I equals 1 to capital N Ci phi I, where phi I is the wave function representing the ith valence bond structure and Ci is the corresponding coefficient in the linear combination, and N is the overall number of valence bond structures. We tried to solve this Schrödinger equation using the variational principle and get the set of secular equations sum over j equals 1 to n hij minus esij cj equals 0 I equals 1 to n, where hij and sij are the Hamiltonian and overlap matrix elements. The diagonal matrix elements HII are actually the energies of the corresponding valence bond structures. Now, during a reaction, the nuclei within the structures change their relative disposition, and we now know from our discussion on the Born-Oppenheimer potential energy surface that this would entail change in the relative energies of the structures along with their weightage in the overall wave function. In the empirical valence bond method, these different valence bond states are described by classical potential energy surfaces obtained from classical force fields instead of actual quantum calculations. A very important difference is that Morse potentials are used instead of harmonic potentials to allow breaking of bonds during reactions. The empirical valence bond method constructs an energy matrix involving the different states just like a quantum system. However, all the elements are calibrated in an empirical manner. The eigenvalues of the energy matrix along a reaction coordinate gives the required free energy profiles for the reaction. Because of its comparatively less demand for computational resources, the empirical valence bond method is now being applied to study reactions in large biomolecular complexes such as mechanism of peptide bond synthesis on the ribosome or rotary chemical coupling in F1 ATPase and so on. Let us now summarize. The Born-Oppenheimer approximation decouples the electronic degrees of freedom from the nuclear ones in a molecule, enabling us to solve the electronic Schrödinger equation without taking into consideration the movement of the nuclei. This is a great simplification in calculation and in turn leads to the concept of the Born-Oppenheimer potential energy surface for a molecule that will be shown in future modules to be a key concept for molecular modeling of biomolecules. The valence bond method proposed by Hitler and London was the first quantum chemical treatment that successfully explained the formation of a hydrogen molecule from two isolated hydrogen atoms.